Welcome to Stories from Site, the podcast for renovation enthusiasts. I'm Amy Donalik, and together with my co-host Jane Middlehurst, we chat with home renovators about the rollercoaster that is renovation.
So it's been a very varied series, I would say.
It has, as always.
As always. We've had Lydia with maybe the fastest reno I've ever heard of.
Yep.
We've had Kilias with wellness and well-being and how to incorporate that in design. We've had Vicky, the YouTube DIY legend.
That was amazing.
Also known as the carpenter's daughter. We've had Catherine with a total full house refurb, loft, rear extension, the full works. We've had Emily on the Isle of Wight with her bungalow, making a villa. And actually, I wanted to start with Nikki and Fergie. Their episode, I think, brought up a really interesting question for me, which is they kind of had to navigate unreliable builders, and their main takeaway was just make sure you get the right tradespeople. And I guess it left me with the feeling like this idea of having to fight for what you want. And I remember her really saying about the window seat, and she kind of really, pushed for it and made sure it happened as she wanted. And also the larder and also the garden seat outside. And I guess I wanted to know your thoughts on that, whether you think it's kind of down to luck of the draw or finding the right builder and making sure, even if you have to wait for that builder, like having the patience to do that, or is it just the nature of residential architecture?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about their episode afterwards as well. And I think kind of because in that episode, I think we said, like in a way, separating off those different things. So when something really matters to you, you can bring in the person that's specific to do that job so that you're more in control because you've made a direct link to the person. So you can talk to them and organize it without having to go through the main contractor, which sometimes can get a bit muddied because you're talking to one person and actually it's someone else that's turning up to do the work, and you don't always get to have that conversation. But that goes totally contrary to other advice that we've given previously in other episodes, which is when you get separate people in and you make separate connections with people and you push them all onto a building site together, obviously that's going to be tricky because those people aren't used to working together. And therefore you're opening up a can of worms. I really remember it in one of our older ones where there was a flooring person who the clients were saying was kind of a prima donna who was making a fuss of like everything, not all the stuff being in the way, and he couldn't do his work and things. And it is like that. Sometimes when you bring outside people in, you're trying to ask people to work together that haven't worked together before. And that also can be hard. I guess it's frustrating because there's two different methods of organizing people in that situation. And it depends on a few different factors, which one's going to be better for you in terms of getting the job done. And before you start, it's not always going to be known which is the better version. But one way to kind of work around that is maybe if you are using a main contractor and they are using their subcontractors to do different works or bring people in, then you really want to be asking who those people are. Like, it's okay to find out if somebody's going to be fitting a stair for you. Who are they? Do they always fit stairs? What have they done before? If they want to use their kitchen provider, who's the kitchen fitter? I think you can be brave enough to inquire who the people are and maybe even get a conversation directly with that person. I think that's okay. And then on the other hand, if you really feel like, you know what, I want to get right involved, I'm going to get in the middle of this, I don't mind coordinating all these different people because, you know what, this is really important to me that this gets done well.
So do you think it comes down to kind of personality? It's like how much control you want to have over the process?
Yeah, I guess how much control do you want to have of the process? How important is that final finish? And I guess if you're starting to get the feeling that the final finish is not going well with your contractor, I think it is okay to make a change. I think you can do it in a nice way and not like a confrontational way, but you've got to see whether you feel that you've got the right people for the job. And if you haven't, like, it's okay to rework things to make it work for you.
I think it is really hard though, because there's a lot of pressure on finding the right builder in the beginning and just making sure that I guess we always talk about alignment, kind of making sure that the team is fitting your vision of what you want to achieve. But I think what's difficult about that is, I guess you can go on what they've already done, and that's really key. But also the nature of that moment in time, the builder's super positive, optimistic, like if they need the job or they want the job, like, there is a sales aspect to that moment in time. And so I guess it is about doing your homework and being thorough with that. But most people start off feeling really confident and like, oh yeah, great, this is the person. So I think that's what makes it even harder. It's like how you start out doesn't kind of guarantee the finish. Do you know what I mean?
It is an unknown. I guess one thing that we do, which might be helpful, I guess it goes back to kind of how we talk about budgeting. You've got to think about your project as lots of mini jobs, basically. You have, if you're having an extension, your heating, your flooring, they can all be broken down into these little categories. We would find a person or a provider or a supplier who we were happy with, get a quote from them, you talk about what it is, the job that needs to be done, and you get to know a bit more about what the requirements are, what will work, what won't. You put that person or that quote to your main contractor and say, we've spoken to this person, they said they were going to do this X for this price, and get their feedback on it. If they say, actually, you know what, we have a better person that we would rather work with, you can have that chat and say, okay, well, who's your person? Can we chat to them? Can we make sure that we're happy with the person that you're supplying? Because if you don't have that conversation, there's just an assumption that the thing will be provided, but in a way, you don't really know what the quality or the type of service is. One service of bespoke joinery, for example, or a joiner can be totally different from another.
But I think it comes down to budget, doesn't it? Because I think often you're in that position where you're like, okay, yeah, I would like to go for this person who's got a quote. I know I like the end product, blah, blah, blah. But your contractor says, do you know what? We know a guy and it's half the price.
That can happen. But I guess you then go into that situation with a knowledge of, okay, so the very thing that I wanted that was maybe like bespoke and high quality, and the thing that I had set out on is this price. I'm asking somebody to do it for less in-house, which is possible because, maybe they're not a company with their overheads or a shop or things like that. So it's not that it's out of the question, but that you're taking a risk on that. So when it comes to that item being delivered, you can either just cross your fingers and hope for the best, or you can say, I'd really like to sit down and chat with the person who's going to be doing this part of the works and show them some images, or say, this is the thing that we had in mind. And getting that conversation is like the hardest thing in the world, isn't it? To actually get the conversation with the person who's going to turn up and do the job is the hardest thing. But I think that's why, if you talk about it in that moment before you sign the contracts and before anything happens, and just in a way you're saying, this thing matters to me, and you're requesting that meeting early on, so that when you then come and ask for it later, you've got more of a push behind the thing that you're looking for.
But then it also just brings in the question of like, okay, so I have to choose these 3 things that are really important. And in some ways you'd be justified to think, well, it's all important. I'm spending over £100,000. Like,
yes. Yeah.
Are you really saying that you're going to have to choose the kind of items that are important? I mean, it's a bit mad, isn't it, when you think of it like that?
It is. But everybody has their different talents, whether that's kind of having a really efficient team or being able to kind of do quite low cost because they do everything in-house. It is always a juggle and a balance. And I think that was interesting what came up in Emily's one when we were talking about the fact that her contractor didn't really do snagging.
Yeah.
It's like, it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? It's like you have somebody that's bish bash bosh going to come in and do the job, but you're going to have to tie up the loose ends yourself. Like, I think the problem is that always is a compromise, because you aren't buying a finished product off a production line. And it's not a neat parcel, and there isn't a
Yeah.
neat handover, and there isn't this kind of bow. And that is frustrating, but it's more like a balancing act of what's important to you. And that goes back to, going at the very beginning of your project when you're choosing your contractor, like what is the thing that is most important to you? Is it the time? Is it the finish? Is it the joinery? Is it the windows? Is it the insulation? It can be all of those things, but you kind of need to prioritize. We're about to meet contractors for our project, and there are different types of contractor that we're going to be talking to. One's a joiner who's done loads of amazing carpentry and who now does like bigger projects. One's more of a like, they all wear the t-shirts and they come and do the job, and they have everything kind of organized and sorted. One's like a one-man band who it's probably going to take longer, and he has to pull in a team, like they aren't full-time employed with him. So they're all different people with different strengths and weaknesses. We're looking at those contractors and we can see the positives and the downsides to each setup. But we're going to have a conversation where we sit down and we say, well, what is important to us? And that's the alignment, isn't it? If we know that we don't want to be living in a building site forever, I think getting the team that's like the t-shirts and the project manager,
Yeah.
it would be great.
Does he have a clipboard?
Yeah, does he have a clipboard? Like, but in that essence, that project's going to go so fast that we're not going to be able to be like, when we said we wanted it like this, could we try out this
creep
thing?
just won't.
It won't happen in that situation because they're doing a great thing, which is like, just, wow, give us the information.
I think I know which one you want to go for.
Get the job done. Well, no, but then the one-man band guy who, might take longer, and he's here all the time. And I feel like I have no idea. I've never met any of these people. We haven't met them yet, but we're already having the conversation, which is like, maybe if we worked with them, they're on site every day, we're going to be able to come up and say, okay, how were you thinking about doing this? Like, is there a better way of doing it? There's more control, there's more conversation, but it's definitely going to be longer. There's no doubt about that it will be a longer process because of all that kind of thinking and just being in a slower pace with one person. So it is about that alignment, which he said. And I think it's understanding the strengths and weaknesses, which with the different type of people you're chatting to can bring to the project.
I guess the other thing that kind of came out of the series for me was just the concept of time, because it felt like everyone had been on a bit of a journey. I mean, except Lydia, who, that was like record breaking.
That was a sprint.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it kind of hit me. We were talking with Emily about her journey, which it did take some time. She had to swap architects. I was thinking about Catherine, who, they just completely unstitched the house and, and then had to like sew it all back up again. And with Kilias as well, just this kind of the concepts that were really important to him took time to research and make happen. What is our advice, really? Just taking the series and seeing the full breadth. I feel like it was really just lots and lots of different types of setting up your projects and making it happen. And in some ways, it's great because you can see the happy ending at the end of each road, even though they went in different directions, if you like. But what would be kind of some core pieces of advice to kind of help people, no matter which way they go?
What I liked about Lydia's was the fact that she was being very unprecious about what she was doing. And I think what helped her, obviously, is the fact that she was thinking at some point in the future, we're going to put these two flats together. So this is just a meanwhile thing. And it took the pressure off decisions in a way, because she wasn't loading on lots of stuff to that. She was just like, whatever the basic fastest route to get this done is what we're going to do. And what's so kind of happy about that in a way is that you get to the end and it's a nice space with, like everything that it needs that functions and is fine. And I'm sure the people who are living there are really happy to live there. It looks lovely. And yet she just somehow shortcutted all that kind of worry and concern over the different things. And I think that came in with Catherine. She's fine with her plastic light switches, which she just made a decision on really quick. So on the one hand, it's like, maybe give yourself a bit of a break and not load so much onto every decision that it becomes so weighted that you need to investigate every single thing to the nth degree. And that process takes ages. But I know that I'm doing the opposite of that right now. So we've taken ages. I actually want to do all that research. It, for me, like that is part of the joy of the project, is researching everything to death and making sure that I've made the right decisions for what I want for each thing. But I've kind of accepted that that's going to take a long time. We're all busy. And so obviously you're just like squeezing this into little bits, and I don't want to be rushed. And actually the ideas kind of formulate and progress. Ideas that we were fighting about 6 months ago, somehow through time, we've come to some understanding of a collaboration on what those things are going to be. This is me and my partner. So I think because I know that these things take a long time, that's not been stressful for me.
But do you think it's down to your personality that you want to dive into each subject?
It is. I mean, there's pressure on this because I don't think we're going to do it again. So I want to make sure it's what we want.
So it's made it worth that extra time.
Yeah, but I think basically the cost of things makes you be less precious. And I think that's helpful in a way. And I guess, like, you know, not to blow our own trumpet, but that's why we've made the app, isn't it? Like that whole process of decision making, of balancing decisions about finance and about time and about where you want to put your efforts. We made the app so that you could see that in front of you and kind of play around with it, because it's not totally obvious. You don't know how much your windows are going to cost, and then you don't know how much your kitchen's going to cost. And the idea of kind of collecting all this information as you go along and putting it in one place, and then being able to prioritize things by turning them on and off and saying, actually, yes, the windows are important, but okay, we're going to leave the kitchen for now. I wanted this kitchen, but we're not going to have that kitchen yet. Like, that's the process that I've been doing. And I think that is the process that we've always worked with our clients, which is trying to get all the ideas on the table and then being able to look at them clearly with numbers and images, and just then being able to have that conversation. Because without that, it's all just floating around in the ether. You don't really know how to make those decisions. And as architects, we obviously were holding a lot of those decisions for our clients, but it always works better when the person whose home it is, they know best. Like, they know whether they care about this or that. Quite often architects are like, well, we've spec'd these really expensive doors. Maybe you aren't bothered about that. So the app is a way of giving you control and vision over all those different things, and then arranging it according to what's important to you.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is kind of going back to the series is, in a way, the thing that, you know, the analogy of kind of they all got in a car and they decided where their destination was, and in a way they all drove in different directions, and like that's all totally valid. Like, where they all ended up was right for them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess the app is like the compass, or or is it a compass or a map? Like, maybe it's both. I'm not sure. I need to work on this analogy more, but I think it's like having that thing that anchors your decisions and enabling you to make the right decisions on your direction to get you to that destination.
Even more so when there's two or more people involved, because we've had a lot of circular conversation, like our killer card for whenever somebody doesn't want to do what the other person wants to do is like, oh, but that's extra money. And we both have our things that are extra money, that are our things that we would like to include, that maybe aren't particularly necessary, but that would make it a nice project for us. Well, what's really amazing about this process is that we've put prices in against our little special items, and then you can't really deny that. You know, you've got to look at them both against each other, and it's just really interesting to see it in front of you and say, you know what, you're right. The thing I want is like a pretty big ask. It's like 10 times the price of this that we both think is important. So is it coming together to be able to talk about things in a really black and white financial sense.
Well, it's also constructive, isn't it? Because you're not just going, it's not you say against what I say.
My idea versus your idea. You're actually saying, well, how much is your idea? And how important is it to what we want to achieve? And I have backed down on some of my things because it just, it doesn't make financial sense for us. And there's other things that I find more important that we both want that I can kind of put my energy into.
That process of seeing your idea costed against other things has actually made you think, oh, I want that less. Like they become less important.
Yes, absolutely. Once you put, I don't know, 20 brass light switches into a spreadsheet.
How much was it?
Well, hundreds of pounds, more. You start to realize, actually, no, I want to put that money towards the tiles in the hallway. And also the areas are really important. So I wanted tiles throughout the whole of the ground floor. Once you get the numbers in, that's really expensive. So how about just have them in the hallway, have that really nice moment when you arrive, and then compromise elsewhere. So I think it's not just about the price of the item itself, it's how much of it you're going to have. And it's really interesting to see that scaled and see the overall price. So there's a very blatant plug for our app. And if you would like to try it out, then you can. You can just go to our website, homenotes.co, and you can sign up for a free trial. And we really have made it because we think it's helpful. So have a go. Let us know what you think.
Also, just want to say thank you to all of our lovely guests this series. Also to our amazing sponsors, IKEA. And series 9 will be coming soon-ish. So stay tuned. Okay. Take care,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.